one of the blocks that get in the way of people asking for help is this stigma. People think that it's a sign of weakness, or there's a problem if they call and ask for help, if they admit they have a concern. It gets in the way of it. So we're really taking an initiative to stamp out the stigma. There's our wellness committee, our Healthy Minds Wellness Committee, and that's putting this on as well as myself. And so we're working very hard to stamp out the stigma. There's a website that you can go to and take a pledge. If you do that, let us know, and we'll give you 100 points towards your Virgin Pulse. This is a card. They're outside the door if you want to take that, but that phone number is also on the back of your Aetna insurance card, so you can find it there as well. If you want to know the details of how the program works, there's also papers outside that you can get this, and it explains the EAP portion that was described there, also the work-life portion of it, and then also the benefits, because all of mental health and substance abuse has been carved out of Aetna. Aetna is not your provider for this. They do not cover this. It's all covered through Beacon Health Options, because those folks specialize in helping folks with mental health conditions. You know, if I walked in here with an arm in a cast or something, you probably would, people would come up to me and ask what was going on, and they get interested. They kind of come closer for that. But if I walked in here really angry, or I was crying or upset, a lot of folks would kind of steer away from me, go the other direction. And so the stigma that gets attached to mental health is very different than it is physical health. And my hope is that we can drive that out, and people who have emotional concerns can just get the same amount of attention and help that folks with physical concerns do. As the video said, the program is not only for concerns or emotional problems. The program is used for a whole host of things. And a lot of folks call our program to just make life improvements. How do I get my relationship stronger? How do my spouse and I talk about money, or the difficult things sometimes, and a third party will help you do that kind of thing. So feel free to call us free of charge, totally confidential. Through ProMedica, Eric Chase has done some presentations, and I'm delighted that he was willing to come here today and talk to us about his story. So I'm going to turn this over to Eric right now.
Everybody stay tuned after this. We're going to show the leaked episode 6 of Game of Thrones. You see the person up there on the headset, and I can understand why. If whatever the problem might be is, you might not want to talk to that person. I'm here today to help you hopefully accomplish one thing. It's to remove some stigma. It's not going to happen in one conversation or one presentation. Without 107 or so PowerPoint slides, but we can whip that out if you want. I would accomplish one thing here today, make it a little easier for you to talk about mental health, emotional, psychological issues that you may or may not be dealing with. There's something that I've learned a lot about since I retired from my job 2 months ago, where I've had a lot of parents reach out to me and say, if not for you, I wouldn't know how to handle my kids, my 18-year-old's recently bipolar diagnosis, which is something that I deal with. I'm bipolar too. So I'm here to make things a little bit easier for you. The difficult part with this for me is I have a friend, her name is Robin Eisenberg. She's the executive director of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And her and I would often talk, and she'd have to prod me to talk about the stigma aspect of this. This is simple for me. Like, I'd much rather sit here and talk about my challenges with my mental health, and we'll get into that in a second, than the normal stuff, because I don't really have any fun, interesting, normal stuff. Nobody wants to know about my Batman collection or my t-shirts or my Transformers. But I'll sit up here all day and talk about what most people won't, and that's some of their emotional and psychological problems. So it's a challenge for me, but we're going to try to walk through that. And we'll start with a movie that I've now seen twice. With a quick anecdote, and then we'll move forward. It's called Split. Has anybody seen it? It was a great movie, wasn't it? Good movie, right? Do you know? Did you figure it all out? The end and stuff? Okay, so back in January, it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and people can grumble. Starring James McAvoy, won't go in much more than that, and I'll try not to ruin the ending. If you've listened to the show, you know that I got a label for spoiling things. I kind of can't contain myself. The long and short of it is, it was a guy who had imprisoned a couple of teenage girls in a place, and he had, Chris, you can correct me if I've been trying to practice pronouncing this for 2 weeks now. Dissociative Identity Disorder, DID, which I guess is more commonly referred to and I think we're trying to move away from it, multiple personality disorder. That's the one that gets thrown out quite often. He had a bunch of personalities, so a troubled individual. Turns out one of these personalities was a monster. It was a real live beast. He could climb on walls. Can anybody here climb on walls? I can't climb on walls. I don't eat glue. Does anybody here eat glue? Now, if you did it when you were a kid, that's fine. But if you're like our age, so nobody eats glue, right? Does anybody like stand in the middle of Summit on the yellow line trying to do handstands? Okay. The guy in the movie had a very serious mental illness where about 1 in 25 people have something that's considered a serious mental illness. I think part of the reason, if not the big reason, why people don't talk about mental illness is because as soon as you bring it up, even if it's to a loved one, they immediately think you're going to climb on walls or stand in the middle of the street like a raving lunatic and eat glue out of your backside. You know who's got a mental illness? I do. I don't do any of that stuff. And I've had some very serious and macabre thoughts in my life, suicide included, and we'll get to that. But that's not me. And again, I have been given some gift to be able to share my story so that if you struggle with something like this, or you know someone who does, you could soften their blow, and this helps you work with them, or you can go to someone and not think, and again, a lot of people won't go to a doctor or a therapist or a psychiatrist because they immediately think that words like lunatic or nut or maniac are going to get thrown out. And I know that we're trying, especially in light of what everyone has just witnessed over the last handful of days societally, we're trying to, I would like to get rid of some of those words like as well. Crazy, nut job, maniac, lunatic, all those things. Because people are afraid to broach their own problems because they think they're going to walk into a professional's office or a dear friend and say, I think you're just crazy. Well, you know, crazy is a very old term. I know we can think about, if I say World War II, you can just shake heads or no. It feels like a really, really long time ago, right? I mean, we're pushing like 80 years now. Shortly after that is when we would like carve up people's brains for mental wellness and lobotomies and things like that. We don't have any of that stuff anymore. We haven't come where we need to be with mental health, but we've come a long way from then, from using words like insane asylum and institutionalized. And some of these things still get thrown around, but they're wrong. And again, I'd like to take those things out of most people's vocabularies so you or someone that you love or care about can get help. Let me give you the start of my story. I was born 38 years ago in 3 months. This happened. This happened. I gave one of these presentations a couple weeks ago, and my dad reamed me out. I get my sense of humor, my sarcastic wit, I hope it's wit, from my dad. He said, "What, you threw me under the bus?" Because I said, most of what I have comes from my dad, my bipolar too. Because my dad was a lot like me. Like, I didn't do anything wrong, and that's the other part of this stigma. I didn't do anything to get this. Like, I wasn't running down these stairs, playing around, walking backwards. Like, to me, those are the people who should have a little bit of embarrassment. Like, you told someone not to do that, and they did it anyway, and now you've got a broken arm. I didn't do anything to get this. It's the way I came out 38 some years ago. And again, it came from my dad. So there's no shame in that. I didn't bring it upon myself, and there's a lot of things that I have to do to make sure that I can stay at optimum mental health, or I wind up in a really dark spot. We'll jump ahead to Orlando. This is like 2002, 2003. I had a really good job. I was doing a cool morning show. I always told friends, even back then, had I not been doing a morning show, I would have killed myself. Not like suicide, I would have partied myself to death because I knew the guy who was essentially the mayor of the town. Out every night, out all the time, knew everybody, say hi to this person, that person. It was an awesome life. It was back in the day where it was literally like a 28-hour work week. Like, it was mind-blowingly fun. But I wasn't happy. And there'd be Saturday nights where I'd think about going to work, and I'd have to call my friend Jake up and say, I can't make it tonight. And I had no reason. I didn't know why. I just didn't feel like going. My job, mind you, was to go out and DJ at a club, like have free drinks, enjoy myself. And I was like, and it wasn't social anxiety. There was just some indescribable feeling that I didn't want to go. I wound up going to a therapist, Mary Lidkey. I went a couple of times, I know it felt better, and I had no reservation or hesitation to go. In fact, after I moved away, my friend Jake went, the mayor of the place, and he got some help. Well, fast forward to probably the worst geographic move anybody could ever possibly make in human history. I went from Orlando to Saginaw, Michigan. Orlando was the best weather. I often get asked, because I moved around a lot with radio, where's the best place you ever worked? I say, weather-wise, Orlando. Friendship-wise, support system-wise, it was Saginaw. So I had some really great friends. Crummy weather. Like our winters a couple of years ago was Saginaw a lot of the time. It just sounds yucky. They call it Sag Nasty. It was like 2005, and more of this had begun to linger. In addition to some kind of undiagnosed heart issue, and I don't mean emotional either, I had these pains in my chest, and I couldn't quite figure it out. I went to a doctor, wasn't helpful, gave me a medication, an antidepressant. I'm like, I'm not taking this. The side effects seem really scary. I called my dad up one day after, it's in my throat now, and I'm like, this is wild. And I was having some kind of panic attack. I called my dad, and this is again my dad with sarcastic wit, where I get the bipolar, but I also get the fun part. This is from him. I say, Dad, I think I'm having a heart attack. And he's got pause, and he says, well, okay, how long has this been going on? About 2 weeks. Well, congratulations, you're having the longest heart attack ever, and when you die, it will be in the Guinness Book of World Records. It wasn't any kind of heart attack, it was some kind of anxiety. Turns out, he wound up coming out to see me and got off of Saginaw, and I got an endoscopy, and I had some acid reflux. But to me, not knowing what it was, I blew it completely out of proportion. There was a calendar year when I lived in Saginaw, and I must have had, you ever read any like science articles where they go to like a far place in the globe and it's like, we've discovered 15 new species we never knew existed. Well, in that calendar year, I had about 15 mysteriously undiagnosable illnesses that all hit me at once. And I was like, they've never been discovered. There's not a cure for them. I'm going to die. And it was scary stuff. It was anxiety that I can look back upon now. So I go to another therapist, sit down with this woman, and I'm going to actually sit down with this because I explained these things, like what was going on. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to get out of bed. I had these like days where I would just feel kind of miserable. And I'm like, I'm a pretty extroverted person. I can really connect with people that I really like. I can get energy from them. But there's just days and I'm blah. And I'm fatigued. And I feel sad for no reason. There's nothing bad in my life. I have a paycheck. I have good friends. I have an easy job. What's going on? And we went through the cycle of all this stuff, and yes, I explained the acid reflux. I don't think I mentioned the heart attack. And she said, well, it sounds like it sounds like a bipolar 2, a mild form of bipolar, where bipolar, it used to be called manic depression. And I remember when I was a kid in elementary school, Wendy blankety blank, they said she had manic depression, and she was it was like a scarlet letter some people would look at. We're also talking in the 80s, and it made me think of that. So bipolar, you got mania, where you go on like gambling rampages and other rampages of poor decision making, like sex rampages, and you blow through credit cards, and the depression's really bad. My bipolar 2 was none of the fun stuff, but the depression was pretty darn lousy. So she says this, and there's a reason I'm sitting down right now. I'm not tired. I'm in great physical health because I've got my head all cleared up. You've got bipolar 2. And we explained it, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best day of my life. And it was, because I knew who the villain was. I knew who the enemy was. I knew that there was something wrong with me, and I forget what the exact words were, but I'll paraphrase myself. I said, this explains why for no good reason at all, I would feel sad. And from then on out, I knew who the villain was. I should have brought this over here a couple of minutes ago. But I'm kind of the person who, and we all do this these days, we look stuff up, we hear a word we don't know, and we just go right to our phones. It's good and it's bad, and we get distracted. So I like to look stuff up, and I like to get educated and learn stuff. So I immediately ran out and I said, I'm going to beat this. And I got this book. right here. That's right. I was going to take on this awful mental illness with something there's thousands of them that people laugh at in the aisles of bookstores. Cognitive behavioral therapy for dummies. And at the moment, I was a dummy when it came to that. No medication or anything like that. A couple of years later, I moved home to Philadelphia, commuted to work to Allentown, and there's still some stuff going on. No medication. Got with a therapist, and they gave me another book suggestion. A little more articulate and scientific, I guess, than that one. This is The Feeling Good Handbook by Dr. David Burns. I call it my psychology Bible. I could literally flip through. And when I say literally, I'm just trying to do it for effect. I could flip through a lot of this, and there's highlighted stuff. And whenever I have like a moment, like we've all got a go-to place where we kind of reset and recharge. This is mine when like I can't call anybody or anything like that. I go, I open it up, and I go, this wasn't planned. One way to deal with fortune telling is to make positive, realistic predictions instead of unlikely negative ones. Fortune telling is kind of like a psychological practice where you predict the future. Like, oh my God, I actually do have 7 forms of undiscovered cancer yet. And then you get back within your own head and go, no, you don't. That's not realistic. So I began to arm myself against this with books, and I continue to go to therapists. And I still, too, do this day. And this is the part where it gets really challenging. I tried medication because I was really, really down. And it didn't work. I didn't like it. I was taking Abilify and Lamictal. And it's difficult to visit some of these paths, medication, or to go into somebody's office who you don't know and sit down and tell them everything. Like, everything I've said right here, I would tell to a medical professional, something you or someone you love might do. It's difficult. It was difficult for me to do the medication. I didn't like it. I went off of it like within a day. Bad news. Never went back to the psychiatrist until it happened again. Here I am. Same physical, emotional rut. I can't enjoy my social life. Things that I would normally enjoy, like reading and Batman and visiting my family, sucked. I had no joy in it whatsoever. So then I'm like, I got to stick to the medication. Back on to the Lamictal and the Abilify, and I felt better. I felt better until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had kept ramping up the dosage. 3 o'clock in the afternoon came, and I was exhausted. I was like practically sedated. 8 o'clock would come up, and I'd want to watch some TV, some baseball games, and I'd literally be yawning right there. I'd want to go to sleep. So while I felt better, it didn't feel good, but I didn't want to do anything because I was too tired. It's a very delicate balance, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you aren't, if you get on this path of medication, you're not going to trade some things for other things. It's going to happen. I'm on a medication right now that helps me immensely, but there's some side effects that I don't necessarily like, but because my head is screwed on straight and everything in between my ears works thanks to this one medication, which is Cymbalta, I'm able to more emotionally and psychologically manage it. I'll tell you a quick story about someone that I met at a NAMI walk a couple of years ago, and I forget what his diagnosis was, but I wanted to tell his mom, who shared the story. He was having erectile dysfunction, and imagine that as an 18, 19-year-old kid when you're in your perceived sexual prime. And I told her if she wanted to relay to him, and I would, that if you stay on your medication, while this might happen, if you continue this course, you will feel better about it. You will be able to be able to better manage these problems. Things have gotten really bleak for me from time to time. I mentioned suicide, and I've never tried it, and I probably wouldn't for certain reasons, but I've had suicidal thoughts. There was a time amid all these medication trials where I remember driving, telling my dad, and my dad is, my rock in my life. I said, you got to arm yourself with knowledge and education, and I know that there will be a flashpoint in my life when my dad dies, because he is my everything. And I will have an emotional and psychological watershed moment there that I will have to be prepared for when my dad is no longer here. But I remember calling him one day driving on Route 22 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, home from work, and I said, Dad, I don't care if I drove my car right now into the side of the building. I wouldn't care. Something was really wrong. So I've had these suicidal thoughts. I've considered, how might I do it? And again, I've never taken the actions, but they've been serious thoughts. And it's a scary place to be. And something is wrong when suicide comes up. We have been around for a couple 100,000 years, and every day that man and woman have been on earth, there's been really just one goal. Stay alive. You are not born. We're not here to not be here. You know, every breath we take is to fight and stay alive and to get on to the next day. So, if there is something in someone's head that says, you don't need to be here anymore, something's wrong. In fact, my friend at NAMI last week had given me a pretty fascinating number. And if you follow any pop culture stuff, you know that Chris Cornell from Soundgarden killed himself in Detroit back in May. Chester Bennington from Lincoln Park, like a month or so ago. 90% of suicides are someone who is dealing with a mental illness. And you can laugh at this if you want, but the other 10%, I added this part, and I told her that my NAMI could too. The other 10% owe Big Tony a lot of money. No, really, you could have laughed. Nobody in their right mind, and I don't mean that to sound crazy or lunatic or anything like that, nobody who is of sound psychological, emotional behavior wakes up in the morning and goes, whew, I'm going to let the dogs out and put a bullet in my brain. Because you're thinking reasonably, rationally. But when things are over you, like me, I call it the cloud of depression. That cloud makes you think things that are not reality, including some awful things like suicide. On a much lesser level, I can vouch for these. Not getting out of bed on a weekend. Not doing anything. Getting out of bed and going back to bed. I had to, back in late March, early April, something snapped with me. Like my coping mechanisms were down at work. I had worked some long hours. For those of you who don't know, I didn't just leave and go home and walk my dogs at 10 a.m. I got up 4:45 in the morning, and when people would ask me what hours do you work, I would say, all of them. Like even when I went to bed at 9 o'clock, there'd be emails that I would miss, and people would go, there was an emergency at the station last night, and yeah, I was trying to get a good night's sleep. But I was shot. My ability to cope and manage things was shot to hell. So I just vanished from work. I took my email off my phone, and I know that I probably could have lost my job, but I also knew that I worked at a place that had a EAP program, and I had a decent support system of bosses who didn't want to see anything bad happen to me, but I did vanish, and people were scared. But because I have armed myself with books like Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Dummies, I have a great therapist, I have a wonderful dad, and I have a good support system. I was actually angry this time. It wasn't about me being sad and disappointed. In fact, I didn't lay in bed all day. I said, you know what? I'm going to vanish from work, but I'm mad this time because I'm tired of things feeling and being hopeless. I remember this time I sat in my car at the gym and I said, Dad, I'm angry now and I want to beat this. And you know what? There's good news and bad news when it comes to mental health. The bad news is it's not curable. Sorry. I remember when they told my mom, or they told me about my mom who had cancer, it's not curable, but it's treatable. I knew what that was code for. She didn't have as long as we would like. This is different. Granted, we can't scan for it like cancer, but if you're honest with the people that love you and want to take care of you, you will get to where you want to be, which is me, right here, 3 months removed from basically saying, you know what, I'm not going back to work. But I went to my doctor, and I was aggressive about this, and I said, you know what, let's change the medication, and we explored some other things. And he was honest in asking questions, and I was honest in giving him answers. And had I not been through, granted, years of experience with all this and educating myself, I wouldn't have known what to share with him, and I wouldn't be here right now. So to wrap things up, I guess I should say that maybe I lied. I wanted to take away some of the stigma or stamp out the stigma when it comes to talking about mental health. And it took me a long time and many times of maybe putting my job at risk, scaring loved ones, including the person I love most, my dad, to get to this very moment. Maybe I have been given, I've come across a neat apocryphal quote lately that the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. And I've been lucky enough over the last couple of months since my retirement to give away this gift and to give the education that took me basically my whole life, to share it with people like you guys and others, to take away that stigma and give it to you in quick bursts so that you can address your problems or those of who you love. I said I wanted to accomplish that. I hope I accomplished that. I also wanted to get one laugh. I'm glad that the Big Tony joke got a little bit laugh, but I realized we were serious there, and maybe I didn't message that the right way. The other thing I wanted people to learn with, and I was thinking about this yesterday, I wanted to finish with like a big bang, like a big swooping home run where everybody just walks out of there and you walk out and go, wow, that was profound. I feel like my life has changed right now. I'd love to do that because this would mean I wouldn't have to do radio anymore and I can give talks like these. Sometimes I underestimate myself. And the way I want to finish with is what I hope you learned, in the sense that I'd like you to be able to erase another word from your vocabulary, which I'm still trying to do. Like I said, not curable, but treatable. This is often very progressive, and you've got to get aggressive like I have. And the one word that I hope that I won't say anymore, look, crazy, lunatic, maniac, stuff like that's going to slip out. But the one word that I don't want to be familiar with anymore, and when I do start to say it to myself in my head, I know something's wrong. I hope that for you or for a loved one or whoever, someone that you care about, you and they can know that you can defeat the indefatigable foe of hopelessness. It's not a place that you've got to stay or anything like that. And it is a very, very tormenting, talented foe, but it's one that you could beat. This is usually where there's like a Q&A, but this is not usually the kind of thing where people want to come up or raise their hand and say, I've been thinking about putting peanut butter in my eardrum, and but if anybody has questions or would like to reach out to me, it's pretty easy to track me down. I appreciate your time, and if you didn't learn anything, at least you're not out in the sun getting other types of men. Everything causes cancer these days. So thank you very much, and if you want to clap, clap. If not, thank you for being here. All right,